Hi guys, Squirrel here. In this video I'm going to take a look at a couple of flight sim peripherals. The first one is this. This is the FCU Cube and it's for an A320, and you can see it's got its own little stand down here. The second one, something I've never had before, this is an MCDU, also for an A320, and you can see it says stand inside. Now I'm hoping that I can put both of these on my rig, but first let's unbox them and take a look. So, for the purposes of full disclosure, both of these products were sent to me by Wingflex, but I received no money for doing this video. The editorial content is mine, as are my opinions. We'll start off by unboxing the A320 FCU Cube. Let's take a look at the box. It says it's backlight adjustable, plug and play, stand inside, flight anywhere with Cube, which is presumably the software. Let's pop the box open and see what's inside. So it looks like we've got a A320 quick install manual. That really is quite quick. 4 screws, a stand and a screwdriver and a USB cable. And then there is the unit. Still got its little plastic covers on. On the back, WX A320 FCU Cube and just a single USB-C. There's also a couple of, I can't work out if they're feet or dials. I think they're dials. Then we've got a little box which has a USB-C cable and not a screwdriver. We've got what looks like an Allen key screwdriver. And then we've got the stand. That's got rubber bits. That must be like that. And then that must go like that. And then 4 screws. So presumably this screws on like that. So it basically tips it up towards you so that when you've got it on your desk or whatever, it's angled up towards you. So I think what I'll do is I'll screw this together and then we'll take a look at it. So there we go, 4 screws, and the whole thing is mounted. Because of the rubberized grip on the feet, it doesn't want to slide anywhere. I think that works pretty well. Although you don't have to put your hand on it, I think, when you're pushing the buttons. Otherwise, if you try and push them like that, you might have a tendency to push it backwards on the table. What I might do, because I do happen to have the mini FCU, the flight control unit, I might put it next to this and take a look at it. This is something that I've had attached to my rig for about 6 or 8 months. This is the mini cockpit version of it. I just thought it'd be fun to put them next to each other just to see how they stack up. I mean, obviously they're modeled on an Airbus A320, right? So they're going to look exactly the same on the front. But what I could tell is the mini FCU version is a lot deeper than the Wingflex version. The Wingflex version is a lot more compact. And I think it'd be fun to try and see what it sounds like. But anyway, that's the mini FCU. I think the only thing left to do is peel this off. Why is that always so satisfying? Let's now take a look at the MCDU. Just taking a look at the box, it basically says it's got a 32-bit ARM processor in it. It says USB plug and play, firmware upgradable online, etc. And it has a standing size. And more importantly, 1-to-1 full size. So this is the same size as what you'll get inside an actual A320. Okay, there we go. Look at that. That is an actual like Airbus teal color, isn't it? So it looks like it's got a bracket on the back. Looks like it's screwed in from the top. I can see mounting holes straight away. I can see 2 there and 1 up there which has already got a screw in it, which is holding that plate. That plate must be part of the stand. And then you've got these buttons here. Let me bring the microphone back in again and see if we can get a listen to this. Also, these actual keys here are of a sort of a rubberized plastic feel to them. What else have we got in the box? We have the same USB-C cable that we saw before. Screws, presumably they fit inside those extra holes there. What's this? Presumably the stand. It's in a little velvet bag. Okay, well this is interesting. So it's like a sort of a expanding X design. So I guess it's something like this, and then you can adjust the width of it, but obviously you can rake the height, and then somehow that mounts onto this. I don't think I'll use this. If possible, I'm hoping to get this onto my rig, which would then leave me with this, which would actually be quite useful for my tablet. Right, there's a little screen thing in here, so I'm going to bring the microphone in and we're just going to do that little plastic reveal thing. That didn't want to come off. Okay, I'm going to figure this out and see if I can mount it on there. Right, I don't know if I've done this correctly or not because I didn't get any instructions in the box. I don't know if I'm missing some instructions or not. But all I've done is taken 2 screws out of the back of this thing and screwed it into these notches down the side there. And, well, as far as I can tell, that's all I need to do. That is now firmly mounted. Oh, the other thing is you get these screws with these little covers, which is really nice because that means if you do end up mounting it like I probably will, I could use those and they've got a coloured cover on. And that leaves you, what's that, about 6 mil, I'd say, 6 or 7 millimeters of depth of screw for you to mount it into something. Whether that will work for me or not, I don't know. When it comes to the FCU itself, there aren't any mounting holes on the bottom of this thing at all. So what I'm probably going to have to do is use the fact that this stand itself actually has holes in the bottom and see if I can actually mount the stand onto the rig. But other than that, there's no way of mounting that actual unit. Right, so I've downloaded the software from their website, Wingflex. I've fired it up, I went to the setup and then basically told it flight simulator is. So it recognizes 2020, 2024, and it also recognizes Steam versions of both of those. And then there's ProSim, there's X-Plane, and there's P3D version 5 and version 6. So you just point it to the paths and then it's just gonna do its magic, I think. There's no install, you just run this executable that you get. So let's plug it in and see what it looks like. Okay, well, I've plugged it in and on the software it's basically showing both of them. Oh, there we go. All right, so the software's now recognized it. As soon as I clicked on it, it brought up this display here, and when I slide the screen slider around, you can see the brightness of that thing goes up and down. There's also a brightness and dim here, which I presume does something, but not at the moment. And then there's how bright you want the key backlighting to be. You can kind of see it goes a little bit orangey. And if I go back to equipment, I can click on the FCU cube. That then lights up. And it's a similar thing here. We've got the screen brightness at the top, which I can't seem to slide. And then a backlight brightness. So they're not, presumably they're controlled from underneath. Ah, there you go. So you can't slide them with the mouse. You actually physically turn these. There you go. Wow. That goes from completely dark to fully lit. And then you've got another control for the brightness of the display. That's really nice, actually. Okay, awesome. Well, it's recognized both of them. If I go to, is that the firmware thing? It's not saying it needs a firmware update. So it's recognized the platform, Microsoft Flight Simulator. So what I'll do now is I'll spawn into an A320 and we'll see if it just starts to work. All right, my choices are to go with a Microsoft Flight Simulator A320 or I can go with a Phoenix Sim. I'll tell you what we'll do. Let's try a Phoenix Sim A321. Let's see if it works out the box with that, shall we? Well, things are happening. It's starting to light up, so I think it's already connected to the sim. Okay, so if I actually look at the software is now saying, look at this, aircraft Phoenix A321 IAE. It's found it. I didn't have to do anything. It just found it straight away. And if you actually have a look at the FCU in the aircraft, presumably we can now mess about with all this. There you go. So we can set the speed, heading, altitude. It's all there. It's all working. That's fantastic. That was so easy. But let's have a look at the main event down here. Now, obviously when you're flying, like if you're flying in a sim, particularly if you're flying on VATSIM or something, and you're given like, you know, redirects by the controller, etc., or you need to sort of punch in and plan your ILS landing, you know what it's like. It's a bit of a pain, isn't it? Having to sort of take your eye off what's going on out there and start faffing around clicking on this. What I'm most looking forward to is the fact that I won't have to do that. I'll just be able to look down and actually just use an actual keyboard. So this is very exciting. So let's see if we clear that, go to the FM GTC, there we go, and then we can go to performance page. That is brilliant. Does that make, there you go, the brightness works now. So you see we've got the brightness bar on the bottom, goes all the way down. That is actually lovely. That looks authentic as well. That really does look authentic. I mean, the fact they've done like an anti-reflective screen as well, it's just, and like all the fonts are correct. Because if you look at these fonts, like this one here is a normal font, but these are like squashed, they're vertically squashed, and that's how they are on the actual plane. So yeah, we can just punch in, you know, EGLL / AGPH, put that in there. And then of course you got your flight plan, which we can put in. EGLL, departure, where we're going from. Should go out to 27 left. Brilliant. How's the scrolling work? Honestly, the whole thing is just so cool. I've never had anything like this, and this honestly feels like a quality piece of kit. I'm so excited to get this on the rig. So this is my flight sim rig. It's also my racing rig, driving rig. It's a general purpose rig. I have a yoke here, the Honeycomb Alpha, and that's sat on top of this. That is removable, so I can put a wheelbase on there if I want to go driving. Down here, I have my throttle and I have my stick. The stick is removable. I can just take this away like that, and what I'm left with is a piece of aluminium that is used for when I want to bring in a shifter. So the FCU cube, as we've already noted, doesn't have any sort of mounting holes on it. I'm going to have to use this stand. Where I actually want it to go is here on top of the Honeycomb. The issue you have when you try and mount things onto the Honeycomb Alpha is these aren't made for mounting on either. You can see there's various holes here. You can see where I've drilled holes. And that's what I'm going to be doing when I get this thing on there. I'm going to have to drill some more holes, mount it onto the feet on here, and then mount the shroud back on the Honeycomb Alpha. So that's the general plan for that. The MCDU is a more difficult proposition. Ideally, I think I would have it somewhere down here. I think this, you know, if you think about the layout of an A320 cockpit, this is roughly where it is. The problem I've got is how to mount this in this area, bearing in mind that this is actually wider than that piece of aluminium. And the issue is this mouse pad here, which is also mounted onto the rig, that's also in the way. That's going to have to go further to the right, maybe even a little bit back to try and accommodate this. So that's what I'm scratching my head over at the moment. So I thought I was going to have an easy life. However, I was slightly misled by the rubber feet on this thing. I got a bolt, a little M4 bolt, and I thought that would fit perfectly in here. And then when I put that through and I started to tighten it up, the whole bolt just went straight through. What actually happened was it looked like the hole was smaller than it really is. So I've had to figure out some larger bolts. So I'm going to go with these. I've got some black bolts, which I think will look better because it can't sit inside that hole, because that hole is that size all the way through. So it needs to sit on top like that. That's how it's going to have to go. But the downside is that it's actually got two mounting holes, but I can only use the front one. I can't use the back one because the hood isn't deep enough on the Alpha. The problem is when you mount through the front hole, because of the slope of the stand at this point, when it mounts into the surface, it will sit perpendicular to the bottom, but it then means that it's sat at an angle at the top. You know, the bolt wants to straighten up like that, but it can't because it'll be mounted into the hood. It's not necessarily a huge problem because this thing's not going to be under any load. I'm just going to bolt it in with two bolts and that'll be enough. I'm just going to twiddle knobs. I'm not going to be pressing on this thing. That's the solution. These are actually a bit too long for what I need because this hood will sit on top of the Alpha. So if I try and screw that through there, yeah, that's going to be too long. That one's close. It looks like I can just about get away with that. You know, it's at times like these that I'm really happy that I've got quite a lot of different sizes of nuts, bolts, washers, you name it. My wife goes mad, but you know, this is what you need when you're doing DIY stuff. You need options. Also, the other thing to consider is the underside of this, where the bolt comes through. This washer here, because that hole is quite close to the plastic itself, I don't think that washer's going to sit though. That one should just about fit. So I'll have 2 of them. Okay, now we'll just tighten it up, but being very careful not to over tighten it, because if I over tighten it, that bolt is just going to crush that plastic stem. Right, that was not easy. Turned out to be a 2-man operation, but it's on and it's pretty solid. So now we can mount this thing back onto the honeycomb. There we go. Happy days. I was actually thinking I might need some support at the back here, maybe like 3D print something, but it's actually on there pretty solid. And for the kind of operation that you do, you know, just pushing buttons and turning dials, that's absolutely fine. Happy with that. All right, now it took me a little bit of time, but I've finally got everything mounted and how I want it. So let's take a look. Right, so here's the FCU cube, and you can see it's on its stands here. It's bolted onto the hood. In terms of its mounting, it's on there very firmly actually. You just got to be careful you don't over tighten this and crack any plastic, but it is, you know, solidly on there. There's a bit of flex. Obviously I can't bolt those rear holes onto anything that's just floating, but it doesn't matter. I'm only going to be turning dials and, you know, pushing buttons. That is absolutely fine. Cable comes direct out the back and then goes into a USB hub. The really good thing actually about the stand being present, apart from the fact that I can reach underneath and control the brightness dials, is that it also kind of rakes it up slightly, and therefore it's pointing directly at me, which is super convenient when you're sat here flying and you're looking at that display. So that works really well. Now, the MCDU was interesting to mount, let's put it that way. There's a couple of little gotchas. Essentially, I've used the 4 screw points here, the top 2 and the middle 2. I didn't use the bottom 2. The whole thing is sat on 2 aluminium extrusions, which I had to cut to size. So what I had to do was move the mouse pad over further to the right. So I mounted another piece of extrusion and shoved the mouse pad out that way. So that's nice and solid where it is. But I'll show you how it all fits on. We can just slide this thing off like this. And if we look underneath, you can see that it has 4 of the extrusion T-nuts. I managed to use the blue capped screws that come with the MCDU. What was slightly painful though was the position of the USB connector. You can see when it sits on there, it bangs up against the extrusion, it will not go. So what I had to do was buy a 90-degree angled USB-C cable. Not a problem, it's just one of those things that if that connector was down here, it might have been a bit easier. Anyway, so you can see how this is set up. Effectively what I did was I cut 2 pieces of aluminium to be the right width for the MCDU, and I then put some brackets on either side of this one, and on that one I undermounted it. All in all, that solution works really well. It puts the MCDU in an ideal position for my right hand to operate. I can see the screen and I can still operate and use the mouse no problem. So I'm really happy with the solution, but it wasn't without its issues. So what are my likes and dislikes about these 2 pieces of kit? Well, what I like is they both come with a table stand. The fact that you can put them on the stand that comes with it, put it on your desk, fantastic. What I don't like is they didn't really think about how to mount it in a flight sim cockpit, for example, like what I've got. That's not unusual for these manufacturers, but really they just need to give us some mounting holes and we can do the rest. So I'd like for them to, you know, just think about that if they ever make a new version of these things. The build quality on both of these products is fantastic. From everything from the way the buttons feel, the rubberized keys, the backlighting, the controls, the switches, it all feels premium. One thing I don't like is whilst the USB connection on the back of the FCU cube is quite easy to get to, it's on the back of the box. On the MCDU, it's in a slightly awkward place. I think it would have been better if they'd have put it at the bottom of the MCDU or even at the top, just to make sure it doesn't interfere with anything. It was one of the things that kind of set me back a little bit when I tried to mount this onto the rig. One of the things I do like is the brightness. So on the FCU cube, the displays are bright, the controls are underneath so that you can adjust the backlighting on the buttons and the actual display brightness. On the MCDU, you have the brightness dimmer buttons over here, and honestly, the display is fantastic. I don't have any problem with the brightness at all, so that's really good. Turning our attention to the actual software that comes with it. Now, these products are billed as being plug and play, and in that sense, they really are. You plug the cable in, you fire up the executable, and it does the rest. It detects the flight sim that you're using, it detects the control units that you've got, and it just bridges the whole thing. It's fantastic. Dislikes of the software are you can't resize the window, and it doesn't actually install into your computer. You just run it, which is great. On the one hand, you don't have to install anything, but on the other hand, when you're searching for that piece of software, it's not in your applications list, it's not in your program files, so you have to go and find the executable and run it. Now, if we're being perfectly honest, nobody needs this kind of kit. Nobody needs an FCU cube, nobody needs an MCDU in their flight sim setup. But if you think about it, most of your interaction when you're flying these jets is either through one of those or through one of those. This is how you interface to tell the plane exactly where you want to go, all the speed, direction, and altitude restrictions that you've got. And this is how you interface with the flight management computer. And between those two things, you're pretty much doing 90% of your flying. Now, you don't need one of these, but boy, is it really nice having them. Well, that's it for me and this video. I hope you find this overview of the FCU cube and the MCDU helpful. Please leave me your comments and let me know what you think. I will leave links to both products in the video description so you can take a look at the details. Be sure to check out if it works with your simulator and the planes that you intend to fly. But that's it from me. Take care, guys. Happy flying.